Why hello you lovely little peppercorns, my name's Noa Lee, god of game criticism and lord of excellent taste, and Pepper Grinder is a 2D hardcore platformer by solo indie developer R.Ach, and is a game that has completely revitalized me after the past month of broken, buggy games, bland releases, and try-hard soulless dreck. That's gonna piss a lot of people off. Back in 2017, a Reddit post by then unknown developer Riv Hester, better known as R.Ach, sorta went viral when he posted a gif of an upcoming project that he was working on at the time. The game, as Hester later explained in several interviews, was billed as a 2D action platformer that combined the digging mechanics of Dig Dug with the movement and physics of Echo the Dolphin, the flow and pacing of Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, and a few other inspirations like Super Mario World thrown in for good measure. That game was of course today's subject, Pepper Grinder, and in an interview with Steven's Universe, no, not that one, he alluded to the game hopefully being finished sometime in 2019 while prophetically commenting, "Everything always takes longer than expected, no matter how many times you've done it before." Boy can I relate. Jump to nearly 7 years later and Pepper Grinder has finally been released to okay reviews, proving once again that mainstream reviewers and the gaming masses have no fucking clue what good art actually looks like, because this isn't just a good game, this is a phenomenal game, and y'all better recognize 7 out of 10, fuck you IGN. Though I'm once again disappointed with the gaming rabble, I can sort of understand the lukewarm reception to this game, because this isn't just a 2D platformer, this is a hardcore platformer that's less Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario World and more Celeste and Super Meat Boy. And if you know anything about hardcore platformers, you know that they tend to be a bit on the niche side and that they're almost always too difficult for the gaming journalists of the world and are often lambasted for this aspect of their design. I don't know if IGN actually complained about the game being too hard because I don't actually read that crap, but I can guess. Anyway, though I would personally label this as a hardcore platformer, this distinction is admittedly a bit shaky, as Pepper Grinder is so vastly different from other platformers, even the games it's taking inspiration from, that it sort of defies any genre outside of the ultra generic like 2D side-scroller. Like, woo, don't get too crazy now. For starters, you don't have the typical one hit and you're dead health system of most hardcore platformers, instead having a life bar of 4 nodes that can temporarily be increased up to 8 by finding special health upgrades hidden throughout most levels or simply by buying them in the shop. Still, Pepper Grinder has the quick get up and go mentality of a hardcore platformer, with death only delaying you a few seconds and sending you back to the last checkpoint. And deaths you will have, because this game doesn't shy away from being a challenge, though it never quite reaches the level of difficulty of something like Celeste, nor does it go out of its way to hold the player's hand and help them along. One of the aspects that I really appreciate about Pepper Grinder is that it isn't afraid to keep its checkpoints on the sparse side. Something I've noticed in recent years with a lot of indie games, and especially 2D platformers, is an unwillingness from developers to have their checkpoints spread too far apart for fear that their players will get frustrated. In theory, this is a good idea, as there's nothing worse than dying and having to retread the same ground over and over again, only to die again just a little ways past where you first met your end. The problem though is that this thought process is often used as a crutch by the developer to get lazy with their level design and balancing, the line of thinking being that if there's a checkpoint just a hop, skip, and a jump away, you can crank up the difficulty of the sections in between checkpoints because the player never really loses much progress when they fail. And while this can work in some games, namely rage games or single screen platformers, more often than not this ends up hurting the game, as players figure out pretty quickly that the game is unfairly balanced and stop trying to learn the ins and outs needed to succeed, and instead learn to rely on checkpoints as totems that allow them to fail upward. After all, why bother getting good when I could just stumble and crash and burn until I eventually make it to the next checkpoint through sheer dumb luck? Pepper Grinder, however, doesn't have this problem, as its checkpoints are all thoughtfully placed at just the right distance from one another, to the point that even if you have to repeat a segment over and over again, these sections sort of become more like training grounds for you to continue learning the nuances of the game's controls, so that by the time you make it back to where you died, you'll be much better prepared than you were your first time around. So yeah, you occasionally have to repeat large sections of a level if you die, sometimes up to a third or more of the overall stage, but each level is so carefully balanced and meticulously constructed that it's never really a problem. And from a personal standpoint, I actually found myself having even more fun my second time through a section, because now that I knew what lied ahead, I was able to utilize this knowledge to do even better and execute the segment with even more grace and finesse. Instead of feeling like I was forced to repeat a section of the level as punishment for dying, as many old school games often felt, I almost felt rewarded with the opportunity to put my knowledge and skills to the test once again, which made having to retread old ground not only tolerable, but enjoyable. Anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. In Pepper Grinder, you play as Pepper, an adventuring gal who has just washed ashore from, seemingly, a shipwreck of some sort, only to discover that the island you've landed upon is full of little green pirate creatures led by a mysterious lady in a suit of armor. After trying to catch up with these pirates who appear to have stolen your booty, the bridge you're standing upon gets cut and you fall into the caves below, but not before grabbing hold of a handheld drill called Grinder. Now Pepper and Grinder begin their journey to, well, it isn't exactly clear. Yeah, something that I really appreciate about this game is that it leaves most of its narrative and plot points up to interpretation, never outright telling you what's going on. My interpretation is that Pepper is a treasure hunter of some sort who was caught in a storm and washed ashore on this island of pirates who steal your treasure, and that the whole game is about trying to get your stuff back and maybe pilfering some of their treasure along the way. Much of this is reinforced through what is easily one of the game's best features, which is the sheer amount of attitude it exudes from start to finish. Pepper hits the ground running with little grunts and pixelated facial expressions and mannerisms that emit a "fuck you, I'm taking over" tone that really goes a long way toward developing her character and her relationship with the world around you. But the game takes this all a step further through its incredible sound design that ensures that each and every action has a punchy weight and power behind it, audio cues that help foster a compelling flow and rhythm to each and every interaction and set piece, all topped off with an incredibly catchy and blood-pumping drum and bass soundtrack that keeps you coming back for more. The soundtrack for this game is fire, with its driving bass lines and thunderous drums, synthy interludes, and occasionally screaming guitars. Last week in my Penny's Big Breakaway critique, I mentioned how that was my favorite OST of the year so far. Well, I think Pepper Grinder has already dethroned it because I cannot get enough of the music in this game and have pretty much been listening to it constantly while working this past week. Composer ZC really knocked it out of the park with this one, and from what I can tell, this is only their second time scoring a video game, right after their own title Misericorde Volume 1, which also has a great OST, and it's also a great game if you're into visual novels, so hopefully we'll see more soundtracks from them in the future because their work so far is top-notch. But of course, none of this would matter in the slightest if the game didn't deliver on the gameplay front, and as I'm sure you've guessed by now, Pepper Grinder absolutely does. As a 2D platformer, you of course have your usual jumping abilities, but this is combined with the titular Grinder, a cartoony Gurren Lagann-esque handheld drill that acts as your primary weapon, but also doubles as your means of transportation for most of the game. By default, the drill is activated by holding down the right trigger button, with you able to point it in any direction using the directional inputs on your controller. Usually 2D platformers such as this play best using the D-pad, but Pepper Grinder is actually an exception to this rule, as using the thumbstick gives you much greater precision and control over your drill, especially when digging through the ground. As you play, you'll often come across sections of dirt that you can only traverse by drilling into them, and once you do, you have pretty much full control over your path through these segments and can enter, exit, or circle about within them as you see fit. This right here is the core of the game, and it's so incredibly well developed with an addicting game feel and intuitive nature that it makes me wonder why no one had thought of this idea sooner. The aforementioned inspirations of Dig Dug and Echo the Dolphin really shine here, as you very much feel like a dolphin rocketing through the water with expert control while playing, except for the fact that you're a girl with a drill digging through the earth. Much like in Echo, you're able to use this freedom of movement when drilling to dive in and out of the ground with a graceful arc, while also using this to build and maintain momentum to reach new areas or just simply keep the pace of the game up. The tight controls of this game, in conjunction with its physics, create a unique and satisfying feel that simply can't be overstated. Everything is easy enough that practically anyone can pick it up and have a good time, but nuanced enough that expert players can really test the limits of what can be done with these mechanics, leading to a bevy of opportunities to experiment and speedrun. This is all of course complemented by some truly excellent level design that so perfectly encapsulates both the attitude of the game as well as fostering a sense of flow that few titles ever reach the level of. Pepper and Grinder feel intricately linked with the world that they're part of. The level design feels as though it was made just for this one particular character, while this character feels like she was made just to roam about this particular world. It's excellent, and all comes together to deliver unique and satisfying gameplay, the likes of which I've never experienced before. Even something like this game's primary inspiration, Echo the Dolphin, can't hold a candle to matching the nuanced feel and pace of Pepper Grinder. Pacing is also something else that the game does incredibly well, as it's able to be action-packed and balls-to-the-wall difficult difficult when it can, but it's also smart enough to take its foot off the gas from time to time to allow the player to catch their breath and rest their fingers. Each level almost has a cinematic structure to it, with all the peaks and valleys, moments of tension and release, which that entails, with set pieces and encounters coming together in certain instances to mark transitions between acts, as well as each level ending with a satisfying climax and ding them all. But then the game takes this structure of tension and release and its gameplay to actually tell a story, to the point that each individual level feels like its own self-contained episode in the life of Pepper and Grinder, with boss encounters almost acting as a season finale of sorts. There are only 4 bosses in the game, but each one of them is a lot of fun and one hell of a challenge to overcome at first. But what's most impressive is how each of them is fought using the very same mechanics that you use to move throughout the rest of the game, bringing that same great sense of flow and nuanced control to a small arena and really putting your skills to the test. They're excellent and quite the spectacle at that. But the game never really rests on these laurels either. It would have been so easy to just make a series of standard 2D platforming levels with a handful of digging sections thrown in and call it a day, but Pepper Grinder goes the extra mile and then some by building upon, remixing, and thoroughly exploring its simple mechanics to their fullest, to the point that each and every level feels like an extension of the last, with the game rarely repeating ideas throughout its unfortunately short runtime. And that right there might be my one and only criticism of this game. It is way too short, and it left me wanting so much more. The game can be completed in about 2 to 3 hours depending on how good you are, and certainly much faster on subsequent playthroughs and speedrunning attempts. And subsequent playthroughs and speedrunning attempts you'll probably want to play, at least I did, as this is one of those special games that's enjoyable for novices as well as those who have already mastered the core of the game, and upon replaying levels you might find, as I did, many moments where you can skip a large section of a level or little nooks and crannies of secrets and treasure that can only be reached by highly skilled and observant players, and many tiny little shortcuts that you can utilize in the time trials if you care about that sort of thing. I'm not one of those people, normally, because I feel like most games aren't interesting enough on a mechanical level or balanced enough from a design perspective for time trials to be worth a damn, but Pepper Grinder is one of those rare games where I was so hooked by its core gameplay that I was more than willing to put my skills to the test and try to complete each level as fast as possible. And as I did, the game just kept getting better and better. This is helped by the fact that each time trial takes the Crash Bandicoot route of time challenges, with each level having a bronze, silver, and gold time built into them, with each of them awarding you a collectible such as stickers and musical tracks for beating these times, with the time trials themselves also contributing to your overall completion score. And they can be really tough, with the timing of the gold challenges in particular being very tight and pushing the boundaries of how fast an ordinary player can realistically complete a level. This, combined with the core gameplay being so enjoyably nuanced and the game's short runtime leaving me wanting even more, caused me to have a blast banging my head against these levels over and over again to master these challenges and unlock all the goodies. Technically, I haven't done a second playthrough yet, but after having replayed all of the levels multiple times in the time trials, as well as taking the time to find all 5 pirate coins hidden throughout each level, I feel like I've actually played through this game about 6 or 7 times at this point, and even though I've already unlocked everything, I keep finding myself coming back to it to try and beat my fastest times. It is rare that a game comes along and makes me actually care about speedrunning, as that's not something I'm typically into, but Pepper Grinder is just so good that I'm sort of trying to squeeze as much out of it as I possibly can, since the game is so light on the amount of content it has to offer. I know that this game took you like 8 years to make, but can you open up a game studio and hire somebody to help you make a sequel or something, because I need more Pepper Grinder in my life. Okay, thanks, bye. Anyway, the game is broken up into 4 worlds, each with 4 standard levels, 1 unlockable secret level, and a boss, with each level following the particular theme of whichever world you happen to be in at that time, whether it be lush beaches and verdant caves, rocky crags and volcanic fiery bogs, icy caverns and glacial plains, or swampy mires and decrepit cities. However, just because a level happens to follow an overarching theme doesn't mean that it'll look and feel like every other level in the same world, as each and every level you go to has its own personality and identity, as well as a handful of unique graphical assets and gimmicks to add further flavor into the mix. For example, the second world, which is all fiery and shit, goes to great lengths to put a twist on this common video game trope, with each level taking the idea of fire/volcanoes and using them merely as a jumping off point to mix things up, such as by giving this lava-filled level right here a kitchen/pantry theme as well to spice things up. The other levels in this world all have themes that are more in line with mining and refining, or poisonous badlands full of twisted thorns, and even a serene beach level whose only connection to the overall fire theme comes about towards toward the end of the level when the volcano in the background starts to erupt and launch molten hot rocks at you, which you can promptly dig through once it has been cooled by the water. Each world also has a bonus level which you can access by purchasing a key from the shop using the pirate coins you find throughout your journey. These tend to be the most difficult levels in a given world, and all of them revolve around a specific gimmick, such as Donkey Kong Country-esque cannons or falling piles of ice and snow, while occasionally throwing in unique mechanics that can't be found in any other level, like with these witchfire things that squash and stretch with a set rhythm. And while these levels are very fun and provide an excellent challenge, I once again found myself a little disappointed with how few of them there are overall. When I first unlocked one of these and saw that it was labeled 1-A, I automatically assumed that there would be at least a 1-B to look forward to, but alas, there isn't, and this holds true for all of the other worlds as well. Maybe this is indicative of some future DLC. After all, there does seem to be enough room on each map screen to add another level or two, so who knows. Hopefully this is the case. Another thing that was just a bit disappointing was the in-game shop found in each world. Nothing here affects the excellence of the rest of the game, even in the slightest, but each shop only allows you to purchase keys, health, alternate colors for your hair and cloak, as well as sticker book pages. Sticker book pages which you can fill with stickers that you collect via completing the time trials, as well as an in-game gotcha gumball machine mechanic, which isn't really my cup of tea, but I imagine some players will be all over this, and hopefully so, because there's not really anything else to spend your hard-earned treasure on. Though I do think the act of treasure hoarding itself sort of fits based on the fact that the beginning, as well as the ending, which I won't spoil, both hint at Pepper being a greedy little miscreant, so even if you decide to forego spending your treasure on the sticker gotcha gumball machine, this gives purpose to collecting it out of sheer greed, and in a manner that sort of reminds me of the Wario Land games, come to think of it. Graphically, this game is gorgeous as well, with its beautiful pixel art, superb color balancing and hierarchy, and unique character and enemy designs all coming together to deliver a striking visual atmosphere and tone. And tone might just be the name of the game here, as Pepper Grinder is nothing short of a masterclass in delivering attitude, theming, and narration, all without a single line of dialogue or cutscene. But more importantly, your progress as a player also mirrors Pepper's journey throughout the game. The adventure starts out simple and gives you the opportunity to get a feel for things while slowly building upon its mechanics and the complexity of its level design, just as Pepper starts out cautious with trepidation and doubt about being able to go toe-to-toe against an island of murderous pirates and reclaim what's rightfully hers. As she grows in skill and confidence, you the player do as well, to the point that the game almost gets easier as it goes on, despite the levels getting longer and more challenging, the number of enemies and the power of their weapons increasing, or the complexity of set pieces and drilling segments pushing the boundaries of what can be done with this set of mechanics. Yet the player and Pepper only see these obstacles as challenges to be overcome, never as a hindrance to your journey. You and Pepper both know that it's only a matter of time before you conquer everything before you and complete your task. By the midpoint of the game, there's not a single doubt left in either of your minds that you will succeed. You know it, Pepper knows it, and you bet your ass that every green gnarling pirate and pink-haired commander knows it, and this desperation of your enemies only becomes more fuel for the wildfire of your sheer determination. All this combines to make a gloriously short and sweet little game that's criminally overlooked right now. This is one of those rare games where each and every aspect all fits together so perfectly that nothing seems out of place, except maybe the gotcha stuff, and everything reinforces everything else, creating an artistic and enjoyable experience that's about as close to video game perfection as you can possibly get. There's still a lot of 2024 left, so this will probably change, but currently Pepper Grinder is my pick for Game of the Year. Please go play it and support its developer. We need more true artists like this working in this medium, and it would be a travesty if they didn't make any more games after this. I'm Noa Lee, God of Game Criticism, and thus have I spoken.